We look at the immense areas of the world where solar could be deployed, particularly North Africa, Desertec, Australia, where you're from, Texas, maybe sort of the deserts of America. What's holding it back? What are the main barriers to it being deployed on a large scale?
Financial, as it is with most renewable energies, and political will. We have an entrenched fossil fuel industry that is trying to hang on to what it has, and good on them. I want to take it away, and so do a lot of people who are in the renewable energy business. The issues are more that in our cost structure there's a high upfront capital cost, so it seems expensive, but the running cost is maintenance only effectively, and then the resource is free, and that's whether it's wind or solar or biomass or whatever. That's largely the case. So and in the coal industry, they are not paying for the pollution, haven't done for 300 years, and not yet. Some countries are starting to have an impact on that, and things like carbon pricing will have an effect on that. Eventually, we will all have to start paying for that because it's killing us.
How do you get round the economic aspect of the cost of solar panels? I mean, there have been lots of projects. Germany have had feed-in tariffs for 10 years. The UK have had them for a few years, although they have cut them in recent months. Are they feed-in tariffs the best way to encourage people to invest in solar energy, or is it a case of governments just fronting up and investing wholeheartedly in huge solar projects?
I think feed-in tariffs are the only way to do this, but I would say that it has to be a well-designed feed-in tariff. Now, these have been around for a little while, been 10, 15 years is about as long as they've been in use for this, and every country that has used them has had successful deployment, and this deployment will continue to produce renewable energy for 25, 30 or 40 years or more. And they've often, in Germany's case, where they have an average of 5 hours sunlight a day, they've managed to build a construction industry of the panels, of the research. China, which is manufacturing panels more cheaply than anybody else in the world and at the lowest cost, are using mostly German robotics, German plant lines to actually produce those PV panels. That will change, but they will do that. So I think the question is, a feed-in tariff that is well designed, which means that there's a mandated capacity to sell the electricity, so they know they can sell the electricity, that you have a certain guarantee to the investors, but that's a fixed guarantee, and a variable tariff that reduces as the wholesale prices of electricity and the retail price of electricity rise. Some of them have been fixed prices, and of course in the case of Spain, for example, it wasn't passed through to consumers, so you ended up with an on-budget cost of multi-billions of euro. Well, that's not a well-designed scheme. No, they've amended it, and those smart countries that are using it, like all government policies and public policy, they amend them as they go along. Now, usually with public policy, there's an overrun, and you end up... The consequence is a slightly higher cost to the electricity. I mean, in most of them, in Germany, for example, it's probably a couple of Macca's meals a week, or a hamburger or a wurst on a roll a week for each member of the community. That's a pretty cheap price to save the world, frankly.
And you say that the solar is now a mature industry. It's a mature energy source. It's economical. What work could be done on perhaps intellectual property rights in terms of allowing this technology to be deployed all around the world? It strikes me there's been quite a few acrimonious disputes, particularly between the US and China, about copyrights going missing or solar panels being copied. How can you overcome this? Because if you manage to get the intellectual property rights aspect right, could solar be far faster deployed around the world?
I just think that's national competitiveness between competing industries and competing businesses. It's not much different to Apple and Intel and others who've done similar things in the IT industry. I won't go into the specifics of that. I actually don't think there's very much of that happening, to be honest. The reason China has been successful, I have to say, is because last year alone they spent $39 billion on renewable energy research and development and deployment. That's pretty large. They are now the largest renewables country in the world in investment, most of it going to their own country. They're doing large coal and so on as well, which I wish they weren't, but they are well ahead on many of the technologies, often by licensing and so on. I mean, I don't think there's an issue of IP theft or any of that sort of thing. I think it's simply they are very good competitors and at a scale that is very hard to match. I mean, 1.3 billion, 1.6 billion people, whatever it is, it's a very difficult country to match.
Okay, and looking at this conference in Durban, the Green Climate Fund is much talked about. I'm not sure too many people know exactly much about it, apart from the fact it's called the Green Climate Fund. What would you like to see in it from a solar perspective?
Well, it's not just a solar perspective. We're here as part of the Renewable Energy Alliance, which has geothermal, wind energy, hydro energy, biofuel energy, and solar energy, all of whom believe that renewable energy should be deployed into developing countries using the Green Climate Fund as a basis, for, at least partially, for the funding. That will, and the reason it works so well is because it pays only for power produced, and it leverages private capital or government capital or other capital, international capital, for example, from the UN or elsewhere, to produce power for those countries that at the moment have no power at all, and can also do it at various scales. So we think that combined, if it's a really small scale, so just a township, for example, it might be that microcredit type schemes might be better than the feed-in tariff. But we just think that there are various funding methods that should be used, but use the Green Climate Fund to get renewable energies into these developing countries, because it's just pointless to invest money in coal. For example, in South Africa, they're about to spend, I think, $1.6 trillion on about a gigawatt of coal power-fired stations, using wind, solar, biomass, energy efficiency, solar hot water. You would have massive greater impact, greenhouse gas reduction at the same time, much larger employment with those, because they tend to be distributed and they tend to have longer term employment for the same amount of money or less. So it just seems a bizarre choice to be locking yourself into a 40 or 50 year investment into a coal-fired plant, where the resource, coal, doesn't matter even if you own it yourself, the world coal market is going to be going up, not down. The same with oil. Renewables, you know that the direction is likely to be down, and in any case your capital cost is going to be done on what you know now is the cost. So they seem like bizarre. You asked before about why is this not happening? Well, it's because of political will as much as anything, and the influence of large organisations who've been around a long time and inertia.